Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all honor, glory, and praise unto Yahweh Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai Ba'Hashem Rachak Wadash. Double honors and respect to the elders and to the apostle of the great millstone. Peace and blessing to all Akim that are preaching and teaching this word with 100% truth and sincerity. And unto the men, women, and children that are listening and learning. And unto the Ba'ath Adawadah, the elect house of David, that is scattered abroad, I give you my utmost and sincere salutations. Okay, so it's early in the morning, but this lesson here is going to be about the topic of slavery and what is it really. So we're just going to go ahead and do a little bit of history of what it is and the fact that we're still in slavery to this very day. So we're just going to go over a couple of topics. Slavery itself, wage slavery, and of course, Emancipation Proclamation, which is nothing but a translation from private to corporate slavery. So we're going to start off with slavery first, and Lord willing that this be an edifying lesson unto the body and to the sincere listeners. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So going into the topic of slavery. So, of course, slavery is the ownership of a person as property, especially in regards to their labor. Slavery typically involves compulsory work with the slave's location of work and residence dictated by the party that holds them in bondage. Enslavement is the placement of a person into slavery, and the person is called a slave or enslaved person. And many historical cases of enslavement occurred as a result of breaking the law, becoming indebted, suffering a military defeat, or exploitation for cheaper labor. Other forms of slavery were instituted along demographic lines such as race or sex. Slaves may be kept in bondage for life or for a fixed period of time, after which they would be granted freedom. Although slavery is usually involuntary and involves coercion, so it is something that is forced. There are also cases where people voluntarily enter into slavery to pay a debt or earn money due to poverty. Alright, and in the course of human history, slavery was a typical feature of civilization and was legal in most societies, but is now outlawed in most countries of the world except as a punishment for a crime. Now, chattel slavery, the slave is legally rendered the personal property, chattel, of the slave owner. In economics, the term de facto slavery describes the conditions of unfree labor and forced labor that most slaves endure. As you can see right here, an Israelite that endures, Salaki, give me a second to close this one, that endured, hardcore bondage, and you see he's got these, markings on his back due from, from most likely from his master, abusing him, with that whiplashing. It says right here, Gordon, a slave from Louisiana in 1863, the scars are the result of a whipping by his overseer. They look nasty. So, it says Mauritania was the last country in the world to officially ban slavery in 1981, with legal prosecution of slaveholders established in 2007. However, in 2019, approximately 40 million people, of whom 26% were children, were still enslaved throughout the world despite slavery being illegal. In the modern world, more than 50% of slaves provide forced labor, usually in the factories and sweatshops. Okay? Or of the sweatshops of the private sector of a country's economy. In industrialized countries, human trafficking is a modern variety of slavery. So human trafficking here. So the trade of humans for the purpose of forced labor, sexual slavery, or commercial sexual exploitation is a modern variety of slavery. In non-industrialized countries, debt bondage is a common form of enslavement, which is also known as debt slavery. Bonded labor or peonage is the pledge of a person's services as security for the repayment of a debt, for a debt or other obligation where the terms of the repayment are not clearly or reasonably stated, or where the debt is excessively large. Well, I'm not going to change the page here, but you get what it means. And so debt bondage is a common form of enslavement in the non-industrialized countries, such as captive domestic servant, people in forced marriages, and child soldiers. So the etymology, the word slave was borrowed into Middle English through the Old French esclave, which ultimately derives from the Byzantine Greek sklavos. According to the widespread view, which had been known since the 18th century, borrowed from the Slavic tribe self-named Sloveni, or the Latin sclavus, in the meaning prisoner of war, slave. So a prisoner of war. So slave in the 8th and 9th century because they often became captured or enslaved. So if you really think about it, us Israelites, we ourselves are prisoners of war because the Edomites overtook us. You know? And it says here, however, this version has been disputed since the 19th century. Okay, so, well, again, an alternative contemporary hypothesis states that the medieval Latin sclavus derives from Byzantine, the Greek, I can't pronounce that, but with the meaning to strip the enemy, killed in battle, or to make booty, extract spoils of war. This version has been criticized as well. So, there is a dispute among historians whether terms such as unfree laborer or enslaved person rather than slave should be used when describing the victims of slavery. According to those proposing a change in terminology, but slave perpetuates the crime of slavery in language by reducing its victims to a non-human noun instead of carrying them forward as people, not the property that they were. Okay, let me go down. So you got chattel slavery, which is, and you can see right here, an Edomite flogging a Jake fastened to the ground in the sale of Negroes, farming and mining tools. So that was a slave auction. And of course, a portrait of an Edomite woman in New Orleans with a Jake child in the mid-19th century. So chattels were personal property owned by an enslaver, like livestock that can be bought and sold at will. Chattel slavery was practiced in the places such as the Roman Empire and classical Greece. Ain't America practically the revised Roman Empire all over again? Where it was considered a keystone of society. Other places where it was extensively practiced include medieval Egypt, sub-Saharan Africa, Brazil, the United States, and parts of the Caribbean such as Cuba and Haiti. The Iroquois enslaved others in ways that looked very like chattel slavery. So, beginning of the 18th century, a series of abolitionist movements saw slavery as a violation of the slaves' rights as people, and saying that all men are created equal, right? So, the quotation of all men are created equal is found in the United States Declaration of Independence. The final form of the sentence was stylized by Benjamin Franklin and penned by Thomas Jefferson during the beginning of the Revolutionary War in 1776. And that's when America became independent of Britain. So, and then you got bonded labor, which is indentured servitude, also known as debt bondage. It's a form of unfree labor in which a person works to pay off a debt by pledging himself or herself as collateral. The service is required to repay the debt, and the duration may be undefined. It can be passed on from generation to generation, with children required to pay off their progenitor's debt. It is the most widespread form of slavery to date. It is most prevalent in South Asia. Money marriage refers to a marriage where a girl is married off to a man to settle debts owed by her parents. And the Chukri system is a debt bondage or forced labor system found in Kittapur and other parts of West Bengal. Under this system, a woman can be coerced into prostitution in order to pay off debts. She generally works without pay for 1 year or longer in order to repay a supposed debt. Whew, that's horrible. And this is a debt bondage system found in parts of Bengal where a female can be coerced into prostitution in order to pay off a debt. And Bengal is it's eastern part of the Indian subcontinent at the apex of the Bay of Bengal. The region Bengal proper is divided between modern day, so right here. So southeast of northern India. And then you have dependence, which is the word slavery has also been used to refer to a legal state of dependency to somebody else. For example, in Persia, the situation and lives of such slaves could be better than those of common citizens. So a black family works on a cotton plantation in Mississippi. The subtitle says, we done this all morning. And then of course you have forced labor, which is unfree labor. Sometimes you describe an individual who's forced to work against their own will under threat of violence or other punishment. This may include institutions not commonly classified as slavery, such as serfdom. And serfdom, of course, status of many peasants under feudalism, especially relating to manorialism or similar systems. It was a condition of debt bondage and indentured servitude with similarities to and differences from slavery. So, and you have conscription, which is state mandated enlistment of people in a national service, mainly a military service. So, and back then, if you got in trouble, the judge would give you two options: either jail or you join the military. So conscription dates back to antiquity, and it continues in some countries to the present day under various names. And then you have the penal labor, term of various kinds of forced labor that prisoners are required to perform, typically manual labor. The work may be light or hard depending on the context. Forms of sentence involving penal labor have included involuntary servitude, penal servitude, and imprisonment. So, as slavery has been illegally outlawed in all countries, forced labor in the present day, frequently referred to as modern slavery, revolves around illegal control. Refers to institutional slavery that continues to occur in present-day society. Estimates that the number of enslaved people today range from around 38 million to 49.6 million, depending on the method. And a lot of this is human trafficking, involves women and children forced into prostitution, and is the fastest growing form of forced labor, with Thailand, Cambodia, India, Brazil, Mexico have been identified as leading hotspots of commercial sexual exploitation of children. And then you have child soldiers and child labor, which back in 2007, Human Rights Watch estimated that 200,000 to 300,000 children served as soldiers in then current conflicts. More girls under 16 work as domestic workers than any other category of child labor, other than often sent to cities by parents living in rural poverty, as with the Haitian Restifics, which is a child in Haiti who was given away by their parents to work for a host household as a domestic servant because the parents lacked the resources required to support the child. Okay. And then you have forced marriages. Early marriages are often considered types of slavery. Forced marriages continue to be practiced in parts of the world, including some parts of Asia and Africa, and in immigrant communities in the West. Marriage by abduction occurs in many places in the world today, with a 2003 study finding a national average of 69% of marriages in Ethiopia being through abduction. Okay, I'm here. I'll move on to the next. I'm not trying to make this too long. And then you have wage slavery. And this is a term used to criticize exploitation of slavery by business, by keeping wages low or stagnant in order to maximize profits. The situation of wage slavery can be loosely defined as a person's dependence on wages or a salary for their livelihood. So, isn't that kind of what we're going through right now? Wage slavery? Because, you know, we're looking for a job that pays, that, you know, that gives us enough wage to, you know, for us to pay the bills and to keep a roof over our heads. Especially when wages are low, treatment and conditions are poor, and there are few chances of upward mobility. And this right here is a salary protest in the United Kingdom where it says 10 euros an hour and union rights. The term is often used by critics of wage-based employment to criticize the exploitation of labor and social stratification. And social stratification refers to a society's categorization of its people into groups based on socioeconomic factors like wealth, income, race, education, ethnicity, gender, occupation, social status, or derived power. So it's a hierarchy within a group, within groups that ascribe them to different levels of privileges. So for us Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, and Seminole Indians, you know, we're under the curse of the fact that we are the first to get fired and get booted out the door, and we're the last ones to be considered for hire. Okay? You know, even though this captivity is almost over, we're still at the bottom of the barrel. So, social stratification, with the former seen primarily as unequal bargaining power between labor and capital, particularly when workers are paid comparatively low wages, such as in sweatshops, and the latter is described as a lack of worker self-management, fulfilling job choices and leisure in the economy. So the criticism of social stratification covers a wider range of employment choices bound by the pressures of a hierarchical society to perform otherwise unfulfilling work that deprives humans of their species' character, not only under threat of extreme poverty and starvation, but also social stigma. So social stigma is the disapproval of or discrimination against an individual or group based on perceived characteristics that serve to distinguish them from other members of a society. So social stigmas are commonly related to culture, gender, race, socioeconomic class, age, and sexual orientation or preference. But and also status diminution. Oh boy, I have a hard time pronouncing that. So, historically, many socialist organizations and activists have espoused workers' self-management or workers' cooperative as possible alternatives for wage labor. Now, let's see here. Oh yeah, right here. Similarities between wage labor and slavery were noted as early as Cicero in ancient Rome. And Marcus Tullius Cicero was a Roman statesman, lawyer, scholar, philosopher, writer, and academic skeptic who tried to uphold optimate principles during the political crisis that led to the establishment of the Roman Empire. And it says here, such as De Officiis, can't really read it because it's in Greek, but with the advent of the Industrial Revolution, hold on a second here. The Industrial Revolution, sometimes divided into the First Industrial Revolution and Second Industrial Revolution, was a period of global transition of the human economy towards more widespread, efficient, and stable manufacturing processes that succeeded the agriculture. Okay, and thinkers such as Pierre, Joseph Proudhon, and Karl Marx oh boy, I hate it when it does this. And Karl Marx elaborated the comparison between wage labor and slavery and engaged in critique of work, while Luddites emphasized the dehumanization brought about by machines. The introduction of wage labor in the 18th century Britain was met with resistance, giving rise to the principle of syndicalism and anarchism. Syndicalism is revolutionary current within the labor movement that, through industrial unionism, seeks to unionize workers according to industry and advance their demands through strikes, with the eventual goal of gaining control over the means of production and the economy. And of course, anarchism, movement against all forms of authority and seek to abolish institutions and claims to maintain unnecessary coercion and hierarchy, typically including the state and capitalism. And soon America's going to become an anarchy itself. And before the American Civil War, and this was a civil war between the Union and the Confederacy, which had been formed by states that had seceded from the Union. So before the Civil War, Southern defenders of keeping African Americans as in slavery invoked the concept of wage slavery to favorably compare the condition of their slaves to workers in the North. The United States abolished most forms of slavery after the Civil War, but the labor union activists found the metaphor useful, according to the historian Lawrence Glickman. In the 1870s through the 1890s, references abounded in the labor press, and it is hard to find a speech by a labor leader without the phrase. And this is Emma Goldman denounced wage slavery by saying the only difference is that you are hired slaves instead of block slaves. So, the view that working for wages is akin to slavery dates back to the ancient world. In ancient Rome, Cicero wrote that the very wage laborers received is a pledge to their slavery. So, if you really think about it, employment is slavery because we're working for someone and they pay us. And depending on how good of a job we do, we get to keep the job. They have the power to get rid of you or to keep you. Okay, so and here it says here, the view that wage work has substantial similarities with chattel slavery. Chattel slavery was actively put forward in the late 18th and 19th centuries by defenders of chattel slavery, most notably in the southern states of the United States, and by opponents of capitalism, who were also critics of chattel slavery. Some defenders of slavery, mainly from the southern slave states. And the southern slave states, that's the Confederate States in America. Then there was 11 of them. And let's see, was an unrecognized breakaway republic in the southern states, United States, that existed from February 8th, 1861 to May 9th of 1865. And we'll get to that in a second. So southern slave states argued that northern workers were free but in name, the slaves of endless toil, and that their slaves were better off. This contention has been partly corroborated by modern studies that indicate slaves' material conditions in the 19th century were better than what was typically available to free urban laborers at the time. So, see here. Of course, you have self-employment, African American wage workers picking cotton on a plantation in the South. Let's see. Let's see here. Like I said, I'm not trying to make this too long, but you can look this up for yourself. a lot of info into it, but similarities of wage work with slavery. Critics of wage work have drawn several similarities between wage work and slavery. One, chattel slavery is property. His value to an owner is in some ways higher than that of a worker who may quit, be fired or replaced. Chattel slaves' owner has made a greater investment in terms of the money paid for the slave. For this reason, in times of recession, chattel slaves could not be fired like wage laborers. A wage slave could also be harmed at no or less cost. American chattel slaves in the 19th century had improved their standard of living from the 18th century, and according to historians, Vogel and Ingerman plantation records show that slaves worked less, were better fed, and whipped only occasionally, their material conditions in the 19th century being better than what was typically available to free urban laborers at the time. Okay, so, and it says here in number 2, unlike chattel slave, a wage laborer can, barring employment or lack of job offers, choose between employers, but those employers usually constitute a minority of owners in the population for which the wage laborer must work, while attempts to implement workers' control on employers. Businesses may be considered an act of theft or insubordination and thus be met with violence, imprisonment, or other legal and social measures. So the wage laborer's starkest choice is to work for an employer. So pretty much trying to own a business, you were met with an act of theft or insubordination, and thus be met with violence, imprisonment, or other legal and social measures. So violence, if someone's owning a business and they're trying to build themselves up, wow. Just think about that for a second. Trying to own a business and get things going must be met with violence, imprisonment, or other legal and social measures. Boy, Esau, Edom, I really despise you. The wage laborer's starkest choice is to work for an employer or to face poverty or starvation, which is what we're going through right now. If a chattel slave refuses to work, a number of punishments are also available, from beatings to food deprivation. Although economically rational, slave owners practice positive reinforcement to achieve best results and before losing their investment by killing an expensive slave. Like I said, you can go through this and read the rest now. The final Emancipation Proclamation, okay, was a presidential proclamation and executive order issued by the United States President Abraham Lincoln on January 1st, 1863, during the American Civil War. This proclamation had the effect of changing the legal status of more than 3.5 million enslaved African Americans in the secessionist Confederate States from enslaved to free. As soon as slaves escaped the control of their enslavers, either by fleeing to Union lines, and what that is during the American Civil War, the United States was referred to as simply the Union, also known as colloquially as the North, after 11 southern slave states seceded to form the Confederate States of America, which was called the Confederacy, also known as the South. And let's see, where are those? Okay, so fleeing the Union lines or through the advance of federal troops, they were permanently free. In addition, the proclamation allowed for former slaves to be received into the armed services of the United States. The Emancipation Proclamation played a significant part in the end of slavery in the United States. So let's see here. Excuse me. So this is the 5-page original document held in the National Archives building until 1936. It had been bound with other proclamations in a large volume held by the Department of State. And it says here, let's see. I'm trying to get more to the point here because, like I said, I don't want to make this long if I can find it. So this is the coverage here. Emancipation Proclamation did not. Okay, so this is the area covered by the Emancipation Proclamation are in red. Slave-holding areas are not covered are in blue. So Emancipation Proclamation did not free all slaves in the U.S. Contrary to a common misconception, it applied to the 10 states that were still in rebellion on January 1st, 1863, but did not cover nearly 500,000 slaves in the slave-holding border states like Missouri, Kentucky, Maryland, and Delaware, or in parts of Virginia and Louisiana that were no longer in rebellion. Okay, so those slaves were freed by later separate state and federal actions. Okay, so let me try to get to the. Okay, so let's see. The areas covered were Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana, except the parishes of St. Bernard, Plaquemines, Jefferson, St. John, St. Charles, St. James, Assumption, Terrebonne, Lafourche, St. Mary, St. Martin, and Orleans, including the city of New Orleans, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia. All right, let's see. I'm trying to find the 11 states here. So, let's see here. Background. Okay, here we go. The Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 was a law passed by the 31st United States Congress on September 18th of 1850 as part of the Compromise of 1850 between Southern interests in slavery and Northern free soilers. Required individuals to return runaway slaves to their owners. During the war in May 1861, Union General Benjamin Butler declared that 3 slaves who escaped to Union lands were contraband of war. So basically, commonly used in the U.S. military during the American Civil War to describe a new status for certain people who escaped slavery or those who affiliated with the Union forces. In August 1861, the Union Army and the U.S. Congress determined the U.S. would no longer, like it says here, and accordingly he refused to return them, saying to a man who sought the return, "I am under no constitutional obligation to a foreign country, which Virginia now claims to be." On May 30th, after a cabinet meeting called by President Lincoln, Simeon Cameron, the Secretary of War, telegraphed Butler to inform him that his contraband policy is approved. This decision was controversial because it could have been taken to imply recognition of the Confederacy as a separate, independent, sovereign state under international law, a notion that Lincoln steadfastly denied. So, like I said, the Southern states, the Confederacy, and of course the Northern, which was the Union, like I said with Lincoln here, he tried to abolish slavery, but it's all just a front because, the whole thing is to get you to see, is get you to see the lie, the illusion, and make you believe that it's the truth. We're not free. In fact, I'm gonna go ahead and get scripture because I've done long enough on this. So let's go ahead and get it real quick here. This just goes to show you that Esau, Edom, is the devil that the Bible speaks of, because it doesn't matter what you say, think, or feel, man. You can't trust this devil. So we're going to get the book of Baruch in the Apocrypha here. And this is going to be Baruch 3, says, "Behold, we are yet this day in our captivity, where thou hast scattered us for a reproach and a curse, and to be subject to payments." Subject to payments. Okay? We are living in a debt system. We are indebted to our captors, according to all the iniquities of our fathers, which departed from the Lord our power. So, in verse 9, I'm going to read, "Hear, Israel, the commandments of life, give ear to understand wisdom." Verse 10, "How happeneth it, Israel, that thou art in thine enemy's land, that thou art waxen old in a strange country, that thou art defiled with the dead?" So being defiled with the dead, waxing old in a strange country. We are strangers in a strange land, are we not? This is not our rest. Okay? And like I said, going back to verse 8, "And behold, we are yet this day in our captivity, where thou hast scattered us for a reproach and a curse, and to be subject to payments." Okay? We have the worst education, the worst living conditions. We, like I said, when it comes to a job, we're the first to be fired and kicked out the door, and the last to be considered for hire. And we have the worst health, the worst eating habits. Okay? And like I said, wage slavery, employment. The word employment itself means slavery, meaning you're signing yourself over to someone who is basically having you work for them for a certain period of time, and if they can, they could lay you off, and they don't have to give you a reason. We're not free. Here's another way to tell that we're not free. We have to pay for the most basic necessity of life, which is water. And we have to go, and roughly paraphrasing, we have to go to our enemies for the want of all things. So, we are not free. We are not free at all. This is Job chapter 35. Job 35 and 9. Skip the page. Job 35 and 9, and it says, "By reason of the multitude of oppressions, they make the oppressed to cry. They cry out by reason of the arm of the mighty." Yeah. The multitude of the oppressions that they make the oppressed cry. Yeah, because look at what they put us through. Especially right now, the way the economy is right now, people are not comfortable. People go home frustrated, stressed, barely making ends meet. People are tired. People are pissed. People are constantly on edge. Just, they're on edge of the fact that, if they're going to be able to keep their job or if they're going to get laid off. People are not comfortable anymore. And they cry out by reason. Yeah, because look how we're being treated unfairly. And then, and the thing is that if you've been working a job for years, and yet someone who hasn't been working as long as you have gets promoted over you, that's favoritism. And favoritism, like, what's that, as the scriptures say, favor is deceit. And nowadays it's about who you know and who likes you over, working your ass off. In fact, what's that scripture? Oh yeah, I know what it is. It's gonna be This is going to be Colossians chapter 4, verse 1, and it says, Masters, give unto your servants that which is just and equal, knowing that ye also have a master in heaven. Okay? And that's talking about the people who hold positions of authority, supervision, management. But here's the thing, they don't treat their servants right. They don't treat us just and equal. They treat us like shit. They play favorites. They'll fuck someone else over. They'll replace you with someone else that they like. Like I said, they could lay you off or whatever. They could lay you off at any time, but they don't have to give you a reason. Even if you're the hardest working there and you get things done efficiently, it all just comes down to whether they like you or not. Do they want to keep you? And that's the problem with this society, is it's all about who likes you and who knows you, rather than, who gets the job done. Psalms 12 and 5. For the oppression of the poor, for the sighing of the needy, now will I arise, saith the Lord. I will set him in safety from him that puffeth at him. So, Yahweh Shemashai is going to take those that are oppressed and poor and needy, and he's going to set them down in safety. So the Yahweh Shemashai is going to take care of us. Okay? And keep us from the one that, mocks and scoffs us, looks down on us, has that condescending manner and tone about them, So Yahweh Shemashai is the one that's, keeping us in safety, taking care of us. Let's see. Here's a good one. Here's Psalms chapter 10, I'll start at verse 4. Actually, I'll start at verse 3. Hold on. I'll start at verse 1, and it says, Why standest thou afar off, O Lord? Why hidest thou thyself in times of trouble? Verse 2. The wicked in his pride doeth persecute the poor. Let them be taken in the devices that they have imagined. And I'm going to get the script at the end of this to let you know, where I'm going with this. Revelation chapter 13. So yeah, the wicked, in his pride persecute the poor. They put us down like dogs. So in return, they'll be taken in the devices, their own craftiness that they have imagined. Verse 3. For the wicked boasteth of his heart's desire, and blesseth the covetous, whom the Lord hath worth. Verse 4. The wicked through the pride of his countenance will not seek after the Most High, because the Most High is not in all his thoughts. Verse 5. His ways are always grievous. Thy judgments are far above, out of his sight. As for all his enemies, he puffeth at them. Yeah, Edom's ways are grievous. He causes us nothing but grief, because he's unfair, he's a liar, he's a deceiver, and he's above all anything else, he's selfish as hell. He's all about him. And like I said, as for all his enemies, he puffeth at him, because he's just that prideful man that thinks that they can't do anything to him. And verse 6, he hath said in his heart, I shall not be moved, for I shall never be an adversity. Well, this is your kingdom. This is his kingdom, so right now his people are at the top. But that's starting to, but as you can see, the times that we're living in, the Lord is making his kingdom crumble down bit by bit. So there will be a time when Esau Edom will be in adversity. Verse 7, his mouth is full of cursing and deceit and fraud. Under his tongue is mischief and vanity. Verse 8, he sitteth in the lurking places of the villages. In the secret places doth he murder the innocent. His eyes are privily set against the poor. He lieth in wait secretly as a lion in his den. He lieth in wait to catch the poor. He doth catch the poor when he draweth him into his net. So, again, Esau Edom is the devil, man. And the word devil means slanderer, false accuser, or deceiver. In verse 10, he croucheth and humbleth himself, that the poor may fall by his strong ones. So, since this is, excuse me, since this is Esau Edom's world, his society, his time to rule, he, in his eyes, it's rules for thee, but not for me. So Esau Edom, he just privily and craftily just sets traps for the innocent to fall right into, so he can just go ahead and nab them, and then, that's just who he is. He's a devil. He's someone that you cannot trust. He's unfair to everyone around him. He's even unfair to his own people. If Satan will not be good to himself, who will he be good to? Proverbs 22:7. It says, the rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. Okay? We are the borrowers, and we're servants to the lender. And who's the lender? Esau, mainly him, and also these other nations, the heathen nations. They're lenders too, but the main one is Esau Edom. Like, slavery has gone, slavery is still present in a lot of places in the world, even though it's outlawed. But a lot of forms of slavery are still practiced and maintained to this day. Now we're going to go to Proverbs 29. Proverbs 29:2. And Proverbs 29:2, and it says, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. Okay? Right now, if you can't see it now, then I don't know. You're just mentally gone. If you cannot see that Esau Edom, the so-called white man, if you cannot see that this man is the devil that the Bible speaks of, and what he's doing to not just the Israelites, but to the other heathen nations, just ultimately to the whole world. If you cannot see that this man is the waster created to destroy, he's the oppressor, he's the sword on the left-hand side of the Most High. If you can't see that, then like I said, you're just mentally gone. You're lost. Okay. Let's see. I think. Let's see. No, it's not that. but just roughly paraphrasing because I don't want to take too long looking for it. Never trust thine enemy. Oh gosh, where? Okay. Oh my gosh. Like the scripture's in my head, I just can't think of the chapter and the verse. There it is. Call Halai Ha by Shimei Shai. Sirach chapter 12 verse 10. It says, never trust thine enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. Verse 11, though he humble himself and go crouching, yet take good heed and beware of him, and thou shalt be unto him as if thou hadst wiped a looking glass, and thou shalt know that his wrath hath not been altogether wiped away. So so when again, so no matter how humble he may appear or how nice he appears to be, you gotta look past that. You gotta look past that mask, that deceitful mask that he puts on to get you to trust him. Because as the scriptures say, Psalms 55. Oh goodness. What was it? Psalms 55 and Psalms 55 and 21. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords. So, Esau, Edom, he always has some sort of motive, a deceitful motive. So, we are not to coexist with this devil. None whatsoever. Okay. We are the righteous, he is the wicked. Okay? No matter what time of the year it is, whether it be back in the 1900s or in the 2000s or all the way up to now, this devil is not going to change. He is not going to change. So, this is the Micah chapter 2 verse 1. It says, woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it because it is in the power of their hands. So woe unto them. Okay. And verse 2, and they covet fields and take them by violence, and houses and take them away, and so they oppress a man and his house, even a man and his heritage. So again, these people are thieves. Esau, Edom is that colonizer. Okay. Now here we go. Micah chapter 2 verse 10. This was the scripture I was looking for. And it says, arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest, because it is polluted. It shall destroy you, even with the sword destruction. So, after all the hell that we went through, our people have went through for the last 400 plus years being here, even though we tried to prosper here, and yet Esau, Edom, every time we try to build ourselves up somewhere and we increase, Esau, Edom is right then and there to take us down, just to bring us down back to the bottom. So, I'm telling you, this place is a dead end. There is no building here, no prospering here in America or anywhere. And if you try to build here, excuse me, sorry about that, excuse me. And if you try to, like I said, it shall destroy you, even with the sword destruction. So let this place go, let it rot. close out here with this. Actually, speaking of prisoner of war, we get a Zechariah, I think it was, let's see, 9. Yeah, Zechariah chapter 9, verse 12. Zechariah chapter 9, verse 11. And it says, As for thee also by the blood of the covenant, I have sent forth thy prisoners out of the pit, wherein there is no water. 12. Turn ye to the stronghold, ye prisoners of hope. Even today, do I declare that I will render double unto thee. So, being a prisoner of hope, when we're really prisoners of war because we were overtaken in battle by another country, by another nation. Okay, and prisoners out of the pit wherein there's no water. There is no water here. This is the valley of, out of the valley of the dry bones here. There's no way to progress here or to grow. So we're prisoners of hope because we're just patiently waiting for Yahweh Shem Shai. Okay, so all that we can do is just do as the Lord tells us to do from this point on. Okay, we're not to take matters into our own hands because we don't have that power. Okay, we are powerless here. There is no wisdom here. There's nothing here to sustain us. It's just basically one huge graveyard, a prison grave. Okay. Now, let's see. I'm gonna this is Revelation chapter 13. Here's where I'm gonna end it here. Revelation 13 and Revelation 13 starting at verse 9. If any man have an ear, let him hear. Verse 10, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. So this is what we are ultimately hoping and waiting for. Lord willing, we be of the number. Okay? So everything that not just the other heathen nations have done to us, but ultimately you, Esau, Edom, everything that you've done to us, from slavery, the Jim Crow Museum, the so-called Black Friday, which was that slavery auction, alligator bait, castration, cutting off, trying to cut off Israel, the bloodline. In fact, you could write a whole book about this, but there's many books on this, on all the things you've done. But ultimately, your ultimate judgment is going to be captivity for 1,000 years, and after that, you're going to be done away with. And you can read that in the book of Obadiah. So, once again, this is about the topic of slavery, and I hope that this was an edifying lesson unto the body and to those that are new coming in, listening and learning with all sincerity. I'd like to give all honor, glory, and praise unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachakwadash. Double honors and respect to the elders and to the apostles of the great millstone. Peace and blessing to all Akim that are preaching and teaching this word with 100% truth and sincerity, and unto the men, women, and children that are listening and learning, and unto the Ba'ath Dabadah, the elect house of David that is scattered abroad. I give you my utmost and sincere salutations. See you in the next lesson, Lord willing. Kwame Asharala, Wa Ababa Shalom, Barakatam.